Welcome, it's denome. The next Black Swan event is going to be Europe, and more specifically, it is going to be either when Europe announces a recession, or most likely, it is going to be when Europe announces emergency laws to limit the consumption of energy during this next winter. So in this video, I will explain exactly what is the problem with the energy in Europe, why it will be such a big issue for this coming winter, and how you can prepare for it, and basically just bring it all together. So after this video, you will have a very good understanding what the situation is and why it basically will happen no matter what at this moment. Anyway, let's start with the first thing, which is that Europe is planning to force countries to ration gas as Russia weaponizes energy. So this is from July, this news. And if we scroll down here, you can see that 27 member states of Europe are set to reduce their gas demand by 15% between August and March next year. So basically for the next 9 months, all the European Union countries will have to lower the consumption of natural gas by 15%. And that reduction is based on countries' average gas consumption over the previous 5 years. So if you imagine that the total amount of energy in Europe is 100%, right? The amount of natural gas is 22.3% of that number. So if you reduce the number by 15% of the 22.3%, it means about 3% reduction in total energy consumption in Europe. And depending on the country, you will have less impact or more impact, depending how much natural gas you're actually consuming. For example, Belgium is using about 30% of their total energy in natural gas. Italy is also a big consumer, Netherlands, Hungary, and of course Germany we hear a lot about recently. How much is it? About 28% is natural gas. So these countries, which are basically the manufacturing giants of Europe, will have to lower the energy consumption. And unfortunately, it is not easy to replace one form of energy with another one. So Europe is a little bit in a pickle right now. And that's not going to be good for this coming winter, of course, because if, let's say, that 3% reduction of energy directly translates into a 3% reduction in GDP, that basically means that Europe will be in a recession or even in a depression by the end of this winter. So even just that reduction alone is a recipe for a catastrophe. But let's continue onwards. But just keep in mind that this is the reduction that is already set into place, and it will happen. And they also want to pass this law which will give EU the power to actually force states to reduce their demand to gas. So this is basically the problem here, that EU will basically be able to force different countries out of using natural gas. And EU President Ursula von der Leyen has said that there was a likely scenario that Russia will actually block the exports of energy and natural gas. That was the likely scenario in this summer, but it is even a likelier scenario, in my opinion, for this coming winter, because that's when Europe will be the weakest, because they are reliant on external energy. So during winter, when you have to heat homes and you cannot grow food in the farms, that's when energy is very, very important, that the houses and the businesses still continue to go onwards. And that's when you have the highest amount of energy consumption in Europe as well during winters. A little bit funny side note here is that Russia is blackmailing us, which is not really the case, because as you know, this is just a side note, but Putin still wants to sell the gas, but they want to sell it in rubles. And if Europe is paying for natural gas in rubles, it basically means that Europe has to dump their euro for another currency, and for that reason the price of euro will go down, and that's basically what has already been happening, and that's one of the reasons why euro is now lower than $1 in price. This will likely to continue to happen if the gas prices continue to be this high. And going further, I will just keep adding more and more puzzle pieces so you understand the complete picture even better, what's going on and why this will be such a big deal. So the good news here is that European countries are actually on track to reach their gas storage fillings by the start of this winter. So if we take a look at the chart that they gave here, I opened it here, you can see the red line here shows what is the storage levels of natural gas in Europe right now. They are about 70% full, and they are on track to become about 85% full, which is the 5-year average before winter hits on November. And after that, Europe has to start spending more energy that they actually can put into storage. So during winter, these storage numbers go down significantly. And all through the winter, they are still importing more and more energy. The storage numbers are just going down for the winter months. So all in all, this is a very good news, like no problem here. The problem is that Europe has paid 10 times the price compared to historical average. And this price has not hit the market yet. So when this price will hit the market, the consumer, the business owner, what do you think will happen? That means more inflation, more energy inflation. And if Putin decides to cut off natural gas by then, well, that's going to kick Europe into a complete chaos. But this alone, the reduction in the usage of natural gas through the winter, the 15% reduction, and that Europe has had to pay 10 times the price for this natural gas to fill the storages, has been a very, very big problem, and it will be a problem over the winter when this energy is actually being consumed. And also, just another side note here, and this is a good news, is that EU actually has imported 21 million tons of liquefied natural gas, which is about 3 times more than just 1 year ago. So Europe is quickly getting rid of the Russian dependence, the Russian energy dependence, and switching over to something else. But unfortunately for this winter, Europe's dependence on Russian gas is still far from over. So if I was Russia, this winter is basically when I would do a counter sanction against Europe, against NATO, because 1 year from now, that winter 1 year or 2 years from now, Europe will not be this dependent on Russian gas. So if Russia wants to do something, they are likely to do it this year rather than the next year when Europe is still basically on its knees. So for that reason, the Putin wildcard is, in my opinion, a likely situation to happen in this year. It may not happen, but it is still a possibility, right? And as it says here, the Europe remains dependent on 2 things. First, how cold is the winter? So if the winter is very cold, that will be very bad because they will have to use more energy. And also, what are the Russian gas flows in this winter and towards the spring as well? So these uncertainties are the tension for this coming winter, basically. Something else, just again a little bit of a side note, but this just highlights why there's a big problem with Ukraine right now, because these black lines here and the red ones are lines of gas pipes that flow from Russia into Europe. So as you can see, Ukraine is a major point of interest for natural gas, but also Belarus, which is here, which is basically run by a Russian puppet, and also Turkey seems to be playing a lot into the hand of Putin. They clearly have a financial interest to keep the natural gas flowing into Europe. So these are basically the countries. These 3 countries are the key countries to look at for this coming winter. You probably heard a lot of news for these 3 countries as well here. Anyway, let's continue adding more and more puzzle pieces together, and I will show you how the problem will basically it is already written in the books, basically. So European Union GDP from 1970s onwards. So if we take a look at the GDP, it has been growing all the way until 2007. And from 2007 until today, the GDP has just flatlined completely. So the living standards in Europe have flatlined for 15 years. Except GDP is not a measure of living standards. GDP is a measure basically of living standards in euro terms. But as you know, inflation has been a little bit of a problem in the last 15 years. So if we take a look at the monetary supply, M1 monetary supply of euro, you can see from 2007 until today, the amount of circulating currency has basically tripled. So if the number of circulating currency has tripled, but the GDP is flatlined, it means that the living standards have actually gone down compared to the unit of currency out in the market. So this is not good. So this means that the living standards in Europe have actually been going down for 15 years straight. In my opinion, that's how you can interpret it. And another thing to look at, of course, is the inflation in Europe. If we take a look at the CPI, which is the consumer price index, you can see from 2020 until today, the consumer prices have basically gone up about 15%, which of course is most likely not the real number, but this is the official number that they tell us. But even more interesting than the consumer price index CPI is the PPI, which is the producer price index. So if we take a look at this one, you can see from 2020 until today, the producer price index has actually gone up by 50%. So producer price, what is it? When you have a company, you either produce a service or a product, basically. And this is the cost of production. And eventually the cost of production will hit the consumer price index as well. So this has gone up by 50%. So eventually this will become the inflation as well, or it is already the inflation number. But anyway, this is the real inflation rate in Europe already. And if the energy prices keep going higher than they are already right now, by winter, when you have to consume even more energy, there will be even more poverty, even more, scary situations, unrest, protests, riots that we have seen throughout the pandemic. So this is a very serious situation in Europe. Like, they are already in a very, very bad situation, and just add in a energy crisis here, and Europe could be on its knees, even if Putin doesn't do anything, right? Going forward, all these countries in Europe, they have implemented more and more emergency laws already to prepare for blackouts and power shortages for this winter. So UK is one of these countries. Germany is one, Netherlands is one, Denmark is one, and there are plenty of other countries as well that are not actually listed here. I don't speak every European language, so I don't know what the situation is in each country, but I know at least a few countries that are not listed here that have, changed their emergency laws in case there's a power shortage, or in case the power energy prices go too high, because that's when you have to organize power cuts. Why do you have to organize power cuts? The reason is that if the price of energy goes too high and the poor cannot pay for energy bills, they will basically have to freeze to death, right? If the power is cut out from them. So it would make more sense to artificially create these power cuts, regional or localized power cuts, so that you can distribute the energy a little bit more evenly. So not only the person who pays the most gets the energy, but actually even the people who need it, who may not necessarily afford it, can still have access to energy. But if we start implementing organized power cuts, it will affect businesses and households. So again, if the total energy goes down, the production capacity goes down. So right now the GDP has flatlined, but this GDP might actually go even lower, even despite all this inflation, because they will use less energy, right? So that's a very, again, a serious situation, and will likely to affect GDP negatively, right? Rationing cannot be ruled out, and this is also a key thing here. Cryptocurrency mining could be banned, or cryptocurrencies could be banned, because they are not essential, they are not necessities for running EU and running Euro. So if the European Union starts seeing cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin mining and so on as actually harmful for them, of course they will ban it. And what do you think will happen for the price of Bitcoin if that were to happen? It's probably not going to be good, right? And also you have to understand about, one thing you have to understand about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin is that there's different layers of things that have to be in place for them to have any value. First off, you have to have energy. If you don't have energy, you cannot run a computer. And if you can run a computer, you cannot buy things with cryptocurrency, right? And the second thing you need is internet. So if there are power cuts, you may not have access to your crypto when you need it. And you may not have access to your banks either. So that could be a serious problem. And I will talk about that more when I talk about how you can prepare for this. But anyway, cryptocurrency is not, it's not outruled, has not been ruled out that car makers, chemical companies, and cryptocurrency mining would be, could be cut off. Was there something else interesting? Norway has warned it may ration power exports for the rest of the continents, as there has been some problems with the rainfall, and Norway has not been able to generate as much water energy. And France, they have a large proportion of their nuclear facilities actually offline because of aging infrastructure and overdue maintenance. Because as you know, all of these green policies in Europe, there hasn't been sufficient investing into nuclear energy, which is one of the reasons why Europe is such dependent on the Russian gas. So that has been a big problem. Of course, Germany is in major trouble if car makers and cryptocurrency mining and so on, non-essential businesses have to be shut down or limited. So those are a lot of problems. And it's not only about energy, right? There's also the problem of food. And this is probably not as big of a deal for Europe as is the energy crisis, but it is still a situation that I have to bring up because this is another thing that could cause these emergency laws. So as you know, Russia attacked Ukraine, and from that, Ukraine was the largest producer of wheat in the world, and because of some of the exports from Ukraine have halted and they have not been able to produce as much, Africa has been starved of wheat a little bit too much, and countries like Sri Lanka has been affected majorly because of these situations. But there's another thing also, which are the laws and rules that European countries and these major global organizations want to implement. So these same rules that have caused the unrest in countries like Sri Lanka, which caused the lack of self-created food, is also happening in Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Spain, and Poland. So there have been these farmer protests where 35,000 farmers, 40,000 farmers have actually gone into protest rather than farming. So these farmers should be farming in the summer, but they have been protesting in all these countries in Germany, in Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Poland, and so on. And what's the problem here? The problem is that the Netherlands is calling for 30% reduction in livestock. So basically 30% reduction in animal products, meaning cheese, milk, meat, and so on. And this reduction will happen by the year 2030. And now you probably already understand 2030, what year is it? It's the year of the Great Reset, right? So all these things, these policies, these crazy policies make no sense. they are basically zero-sum policies, because Netherlands is widely considered already to be one of the most environmentally efficient livestock producers. So now if you outsource the livestock into other countries that actually require more land, are likely to pollute more, then you are actually enhancing global warming or climate change or pollution. You are not actually solving the problem. So if anything, the Netherlands should increase the meat production, not put it down, right? So it makes just absolutely no sense for being green. But this is what the ideal that these central planners, these ideologists are striving for. And for that reason, Europe is basically being starved of farm products. And that could cause not only the energy shortage, but also these different policies could cause the food prices to go higher than they have ever been. And so that's another problem that's lurking in the sidelines for this coming winter as well. So all these things together are a big problem, right? The GDP, the reduction of energy, Putin wildcard, the food here, and also because the energy has gone up, the EU, Europe have to sell more euros to get the imports into Europe, which will mean that the euro will go lower in price. And if, like some people said, like, no worries, denome, don't worry about it, Europe can simply buy their way out of the situation. That's why I wanted to show these inflation numbers, these money printing numbers here, because if you simply create more currency units, this will be even more devastating for the common folk, because there will be even more inflation from that. So all in all, Europe is in a very, very tough situation. And I just think this winter will be the place when things will actually escalate. It doesn't mean it will happen, but all these things together, especially the Putin wildcard, puts this winter in the spotlight. I wouldn't be that worried for the year after, as now these issues are being actually addressed and somewhat fixed. But anyway, if you want to prepare for this coming winter, what can you actually do, especially if you live in Europe? Well, first off, I would actually leave Europe if you can, because why would you be in a place that will have, emergency lockdowns, power shortages, lack of food, just insane inflation? Why would you be there? But obviously not everyone can leave or even want to leave. So if you don't want to leave, the second option is actually to go into countryside, as close to the production of food as possible if you can. That's the second thing. And third thing, if you don't want to do any of that, or even if you do any of that, just be prepared. Have cash on hands, because ATMs could be withdrawn. If there's a lot of inflation, you will not need more currency units to pay for things. So if you are not able to withdraw from ATM because of power shortages or because there's not enough cash in the ATM, that will be a little bit bad for you, because you cannot use your card in the shop, but you could use your cash. So having cash is very important. In my opinion, still, even though Bitcoin could be banned, it's a decent idea to have a little bit Bitcoin, because your bank accounts could be frozen. They could be withdrawal limits put on your bank accounts. So having money in blockchain where your account will not be, limited, is very important as well. Gold would be a decent idea in my opinion as well. So just, common things, and you don't have to go overboard with this. These are just some things you could do. Another thing I would have is to have a little bit of water supply, as well as definitely just food supply. So some food that you can easily eat. Basically, the idea here is to use your common sense. If you knew for 100% certainty there will be lack of food or food rationing, what would you like to have at home if there's such a situation? Would you like to have tuna? Would you like to have, peanuts? What would you like to have? Would you like to have? No, well, you can't really store bananas, but what you can store, have that ready for at least like 2 weeks is minimum. 1 month is probably fine. But anyway, just a little bit of food storage. Another thing is, if you knew for 100% certainty that there was going to be power cuts, power outages, power energy rationing, would you like to have batteries at home? Would you like to have a lamp at home? Would you like to have candles? If you can heat your home with like a firewood, would you like to have some firewood at home more than, let's say, in the last year, because things were not as uncertain as they are for this coming winter? So it's basic things. And just I want to leave you with one final thing. And of course, by the way, if you think about investing in Europe, essentials are basically like energy will not be cut from a hospital. Energy will not be cut from food producers. So things like that will probably do fine in a situation like this. But if you are like a meme stock or whatever, they will not be doing good. The final story that I want to leave you with is just a little bit of myself. So before, when I was younger, I used to do a lot of hiking. So I went on multi-day hiking trips in all over Europe, in Asia as well. But one time I went on a 3-day hike, and I did not prepare a $2 blister band with me on the trip. And for that reason, on the first day was fine until about midday, because that's when I started to have the blister. And then I'm like, oh, do we have any bandages? No. Do we have any blister bands? No. So I could not really patch it up. So it started to become worse and worse and worse. I thought like, it's fine, I can take it. By the end of day 1, I'm just completely trashed, exhausted. By day 2, I'm just like, oh shit, we're already almost halfway. We had to slow down the pace on day 2. So I'm thinking like, okay, I probably can do this. So I still bite my lip for the second day. By third day, I'm like, oh shit, guys, I cannot do this. I'm completely mentally, physically exhausted. My leg hurts. My feet is bloody, and all this situation. We have to call for help. But my friends, they told me like, nah, don't worry about it. This is fine. Just you can do it. You can walk back to the car. So they talked me out of it. So we walked back to the car, and that was the most exhausting walk I've ever had in my life. I'm just completely mentally exhausted. My face is like a zombie. I don't talk when others are laughing and enjoying the walk, the hike. I'm just completely, cursing all the way, just completely pissed off, exhausted, and so on. So the moral of the story is that hiking survival is extremely fun. It is extremely fun to, be in the wilderness, be in these extreme conditions. Like having to prepare for an energy crisis or a food crisis. It can be a fun experience if you are prepared. But just like me, I did not have that blister band on me on that time. And that cost me a lot. That basically cost me the whole 3 days of enjoyment, of having fun, of being able to relax. That was the cost of the missing $2 blister band. So the moral of the story is that if you prepare, then you can enjoy survival. It can be fun. But if you don't prepare enough, that can cost you 3 days of enjoyment, and it can make your life a living hell for the winter. So that's basically the same story. Like maybe your blister doesn't burst out. Maybe you don't have a blister for this coming winter. So maybe all is fine. You can enjoy the trip. Maybe the power outages will not affect your life or anyone's life in a significant way. It won't affect any businesses. But in case something breaks out, if you have a blister in your feet, if you prepare now, it doesn't cost you a lot. Like 30 cans of tuna is what, $30, $40, something like that. So if you have 30 cans of tuna, you're good to go. But if you don't have that, then things can be a little bit ugly. So for that reason, I think it's a good idea to prepare and also be prepared for these crazy emergency laws. And if this happens, it's probably going to be just, like a short shock, the same kind of shock that we had during COVID. Like COVID was completely predictable. There was enough signs on January that it will continue to spread into other countries. By February, it was already in most countries. By March, it was in every country basically already. And that's when they suddenly WHO declared it a pandemic, and then all these emergency laws kicked in. And it was only when the emergency laws kicked in that the markets had that shock reaction. So if that same situation happens now, but because of energy emergency laws, that's when basically the shock to the prices would happen. That's my analysis of this coming winter. Maybe it doesn't happen, maybe it does, but in my opinion, it's good to be prepared. That's it for everything I had for this video. Hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments what you think about this analysis, if you think it makes any sense. Are you going to prepare? How are you going to prepare? What would you suggest for other people? And see you in the comments. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you liked it. Consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.